Your phone gets updates all the time, but why doesn't your family? You see, every few months, I know you're just like me, whether it's on your laptop or on your iPhone, you get that stupid little notification that comes up reminding you that you have a software update. And over the years, I've skipped mine, and you and I both know what happens. When we skip those updates, things start to crash, bugs start to come in, everything just starts to work a little wonky and not in the best way that it obviously can or the way that we're used to. But here's the thing. Your family has an operating system as well, but there's a really good chance that the operating system that's driving your family is 1.0. It's probably actually the very same one that your parents used to. There are two types of families in this world. There's the first one who's always playing a bit of defense, the one who is constantly reacting, trying to coordinate schedules, in conflicts because of double bookings, and always feeling like they're a little bit behind. And then there's the second type of family who has a system. They have a way of coming together, proactively looking at what's coming around the corner, talking about what matters, and making sure that they are proactively designing how they use their energy and their time, so that way they don't leave the important things to chance. Today, in this episode, I want to spend some time helping you update your family operating system. Now, I have to be honest with you, I have not always been great at this. This has been a particular part about leading at home that I've had to learn over the last few years. I'll share a quick story with you. About 5 years ago, my wife Jennifer and I were really getting into Ironman races. And that meant that our weekends were pretty stacked. Stacked not only with the regular commitments that we have with our kiddos, but also this really aggressive and important training schedule that we had both committed to. And I remember just after setting up a long ride with a few of my buddies, I got a text message from her just saying, "We have a problem." And I immediately gave her a quick call to learn that just as I had booked that long bike ride and gave her a quick text to let her know that I had totally forgot that our daughter had a soccer tournament that weekend. And Jen was hoping to try and get to the gym before we left for the first game. Yet again, for the third or fourth time over those last 2 months or so, we had found ourselves double booking and overlapping. This is a really good example of what it looks like to be stealing from your family. Stealing is all about having our own game plan, our own vision of how we want things to unfold, but not really sharing this with our family or creating an opportunity to enroll everybody in the vision to make sure that everybody feels supported and that we can get to everything at once. And this often leads to a lot of frustration, a lot of resentment, a lot of disconnection. And boy, oh boy, especially during this training season on Ironman, Jen and I were really starting to feel that as the pressure started to build and build with all the commitments that we were layering on. But borrowing is a little bit different. After stealing for many years, borrowing feels so much better. Borrowing is all about sitting down and creating some agreements together, looking at what's coming up over the next 4 to 6 weeks, and thoughtfully talking about what's most important to each other, because the reality is that family might not always be the number one priority for the next few weeks. And so creating some space to be able to talk about what is important and then clearly communicating how we're going to use our time and our energy is what borrowing is all about. Because that way everybody feels supported and connected to the process that we're stepping into. And furthermore, it actually allows all of us to feel like we have our family behind us, cheering us on to go and do the things that we love, rather than trying to carry the burden of squeezing everything in. A lot of times when an executive and or their family comes to work with me, we always start by talking about what they want. What are their aspirations? They start with things like we want to get better at communicating, we want to have less conflicts, we want to be able to invest more time and energy into our health, or now that our kids are at a different stage, we wanted to spend more time together. These are all really great aspirations of things they want more of. But what I often point out to them is that they're looking for an evolution in their relationship, but really what they need to focus on next is a revolution of the structural discipline that underpins and creates the foundation for how they go and do what they do. Let me explain to you this a little bit differently. I love to think about these 3 different forms of discipline, and everything always starts on the foundation. Much like building a really great house, you can't start with the roof. You got to start with ground zero. That first foundation is structural discipline. This is the cadence that you have as a family, the regular opportunities that you're sitting down to do planning, to communicate around what's important, to talk about some of the issues that you've been working through, and ultimately devising a plan around how you're going to go and follow through on what matters most. That structural discipline creates like a metronome effect inside of your family. It creates a rhythm. And when we have really good structural discipline, what that allows us to do is very naturally improve our second layer of discipline, which is the reactive discipline. This is our ability to make the right choices in the moment. And when we have that structural discipline in place, it allows us to be able to navigate the inevitable mess ups that happen or the unplanned, unpredictable things that come in a way where we're not actually losing our emotional control. We're not depleting our energy. We can respond to these situations instead of reacting to them. But in the absence of having that structural discipline, having reactive discipline is really challenging at times. So that structural discipline and that family operating system, what I want to talk to you about today, really is that foundation that allows us to build on top of that. And then once we have that reactive discipline, that third layer, I call it evolutionary discipline. This is where the real magic happens. This is where all the results are. This is where we end up having less conflict, having more support to go and do the things that we want to go and do, whether it's spend a little extra time at work or make sure that we're getting to the gym or eating clean a little more consistently. Or maybe even spending more one-on-one time with the kids during a particular challenging or exciting phase of your life. All of these outcomes, all of these results that we're looking for happen really naturally when we first focus on laying the foundation of our structural discipline. So when it comes to upgrading your family operating system, I want to talk about three main components that can make a really good, effective model for your family. So let's go through them one by one. The first one is your daily check-ins. And this is the minimum. These are so easy to do. These are the 1 or 2 minute conversations that you're having throughout the day that are keeping you aligned and on the same page. And I like to think of the place for these conversations like an airplane pilot does their checklist before they take off and before they land. Takeoffs, this is when we're leaving the house in the morning. This is when we are dividing and conquering and starting to embark on the day. And when we're in this space of taking off, it's really easy to ask a couple really simple questions like, what's the most important thing happening for you today? What time are you going to be home? And what support do you need to win today? Is there anything exceptional on the go or something that I can do to help you to make sure it's a great one? Takeoffs are so great because when we are aligned, it allows us to go into the day far more effortlessly. And then we have landings too. I'm sure you've been in the same situation as I have where your evening can sometimes fall into the ditch, all because somebody comes home, has had a challenging day, or has something really important they need to get to and finish up before the day is done. But you don't clearly communicate that. You end up saying things that don't necessarily rub them the right way, and it can just lead to a really poor finish. And so our landings, when we come home, this can be done when we're pouring a glass of wine or tidying up things or getting ready for dinner, checking in and asking, hey, what was a really big win from your day? What was the most difficult part of your day? And the one that I really always love being asked is, what do you need to feel complete for the day? Is there anything still outstanding? So those landings are really great opportunities and the takeoffs as well to do these daily check-ins. And like I said, these are a minimum and something that helps us continue to move in sync, in alignment day to day. The second component of your family operating system is the weekly reset. Now, this should be your foundation. This is what really allows you to launch off every single week and make sure that you've designed your time really effectively and everybody feels like we're supported, where there's no last minute wires that are crossing throughout the week. It's a real power move as a family, and I want to invite you to think of this as your weekly leadership team meeting, where over the course of 30 or 60 minutes, you're dialing in your game plan for the week ahead. So here's the exact formula that works really, really well for our family, and I've seen really effective with a lot of the clients and families that we work with firsthand. First, what you want to do with your family weekly reset is look at the game film. What I mean by that is, just like a professional athlete, you don't start by jumping into planning what your next game is going to look like without going back and watching the game film from the game that you had just played. There's so many learning opportunities and moments in what we have just done that we can build momentum on. So start your weekly reset by first talking about some of the accomplishments and successes that everybody in your family had. Use this as an opportunity to share a couple funny stories that connect you together as a family. And one of the things I would really encourage you to do is don't miss this opportunity to explicitly recognize and appreciate your family members for moments that they really supported you that week. This is a great way to start. Next, what you want to do is take a few moments to look at the week ahead. And I mean, break out your agendas, everybody open up their calendars and go through the week day by day. This is an opportunity to talk about who needs to be where at what time, what are the non-negotiables for this week, where is we going to need a little extra support, and where are there going to be some backup plans that we need to have in place where we can potentially predict that things might go a little sideways, or we start to recognize that we're running on thin capacity at certain moments throughout the week. This is a great way for everybody to be able to share what's most important for them this week, what are the commitments that you already have, and starting to really overlay everybody's week ahead so that way you have a shared vision of where you're going to be at each moment and what support you need from every family member to get things done. So once you've built the week ahead and you're all on the same page, the next thing you want to do is to look around the corner a little bit. What I mean by that is just quite simply flip forward 2, 3, 4 weeks and just remind yourself about any commitments or big events that you have coming up. This is really important because I'm sure you're just like me. You've been in that situation where last minute you realize that you have a birthday party for one of your kids' friends or an event with your extended family, and then you find yourself scrambling. And you and I both know that when we're scrambling, when we're behind the ball like that, we don't usually show up with our best energy and our best attention. So this is a really great opportunity as a family to start to build some excitement for what's to come beyond the week that's in front of you. And you can also start to proactively ask yourself, hey, is there anything that we can do this week that will make next week a little bit easier for us? What can we do now to posture ourselves to move into the future with a bit more flow? And then once you're done that, you're more or less set for the week ahead. The last thing you want to do is air some grievances. Inside of any family, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be miscommunications. Having some predictable space every single week to be able to air your grievances can have a huge impact on your connection as a family. Because this isn't all about logistics. Having some consistency in a gathering every single week is a great opportunity to be able to have these clearings and really have some predictable space for some connection to be understood. And as a result of that, really proactively maintain the connection and harmony with inside of your family. I always say you want to strike when the iron is cold or work on the plumbing when it isn't raining. So by wrapping up your weekly reset with a moment where you can talk about what didn't work last week, where did we have some miscommunications, what went wrong, or where did we go sideways, you can use it as an opportunity to be able to acknowledge that, make sure everybody's on the same page. And as a result of that learning, put yourself in a position where you're really having 10 great weeks or you're building week to week instead of 1 week repeated 10 times where resentment starts to build quite gradually and then quite suddenly there's a big conflict. So that's your weekly reset. That's how we can really build a foundation week to week. And like I mentioned earlier, start to have a metronome effect, a bit of a rhythm inside of your family. Now, a common question I have around this weekly reset is, Dave, should I get my kids involved? Here's my advice to you. First and foremost, what you want to do is make sure that you and your partner have a great way of doing this, just the two of you. So start there if your weekly reset is not something that you're doing with some consistency right now. Then once you have that foundation, I would absolutely encourage you to bring in your kids to the mix. And of course, how you do this is going to look a little bit different depending on their ages. But be open to evolving what that looks like. There were many years where sitting down as a family after brunch on Sundays worked really well for us. It was a great way to get the kids all involved and we were able to have some really good conversations. And now that we have kids who are in their teen years, I got to be honest with you, their tolerance for sitting down for prolonged conversations and hearing what their brother or their sister are doing for the week is getting less and less. And so what we have found to be far more effective is doing our weekly reset, just Jen and I, the two of us, and then sitting down with each of the kids one-on-one to go through this weekly reset with them, to talk about the week before, how it went, look at what's most important for them this week, what do they have coming up, and sharing what's coming up for us, starting to look around the corner and anticipating what's to come, and then airing some grievances one-on-one to make sure that we're constantly clearing the air and making sure that we're connected going into the week ahead. So absolutely, get your kids involved in this. Just don't feel like you need to rush in it. Make sure that the actual nucleus of this practice is formed and strong between you and your partner first. And then the third and final component of a really effective family operating system is going to be your family base camp. This is a quarterly check-in every 3 or 4 months with just you and your partner, and really is the strategic layer of how your family operates. Your daily check-ins, your weekly resets, those are all great for getting by and making sure we continue to have harmony day to day and we're just getting things done. We're calming the chaos. But this strategic layer is so important for really going on offense and building your family life by design. It's in this space where you're starting to revisit your family vision, what your values are. You're talking about the priorities for yourselves individually, for the kids, and collectively as a family over the next 3 or 4 months. You're starting to look at your travel schedule and proactively planning some really great experiences and adventures together. You're also sitting down and having those important conversations around, hey, how is our relationship going? What are you doing that I'm not seeing right now? How am I supporting you really well? Where is there an opportunity where I can be better for you? This quarterly reset is a great way to be able to insulate yourself from the distraction of day-to-day life and really use this as an opportunity to be more strategic as a family. Jen and I, what this looks like is we typically would book a night at our favorite hotel. We take the day off work and we go away, just the two of us while the kids are at school, to really look at our family from that 30,000-foot view instead of being in the driver's seat every single day. And so this is that third and final component of your family operating system. When you have all three of these together, I promise you, not only will you start to experience a lot more calm in your day-to-day life, but like I mentioned earlier, all those things you want more of, this provides you the structural discipline that allows yourself to make better choices so that the things you want are just natural outcomes. But don't make the mistake of focusing on what you want without having some structure in place that allows you to regularly design how you're going to go about and getting it. Now, I know you're likely thinking after all this sounds fine and dandy, Dave, but I don't even know where to start, and my life's pretty damn full right now. So the idea of doing all three of these just seems really overwhelming. I want to make sure I'm really clear. When it comes to evolving and upgrading your family operating system, you don't have to do everything at once. What's most important is that you start with where it hurts. Use pain as a tool. So let's spend a few moments here just before we wrap up talking about how you might identify what the right next thing is for your family to focus on. So firstly, we talked about your daily check-ins. If most nights you're trying to navigate unpredictable moods or tension in the room after everybody's coming home from school and from work, your takeoff and landings, I promise, will have a huge impact on being more attuned as a family and creating an environment where you're not necessarily experiencing so many of these last minute shifts and changes in the needs of everybody. So those daily check-ins are likely a great place to start if it feels like you're walking on eggshells and constantly trying to work around the emotional state of your family members. The second piece is going to be that weekly reset like we talked about. So if you're experiencing the weekly squeeze where by the end of the week, it feels like you're building a bit of resentment, feels like you have a bit of a list of all the things that you haven't been able to get done as a result of some double bookings or unplanned things coming up last minute, or perhaps if you're in a spot where you're just feeling that the workload is really unfair and not evenly distributed at a family level, I would really encourage you to start with the weekly reset. This is a great place just to make sure that you're creating some more slack in the line as a family. I often use the metaphor, if you're like us and have cottage country in Canada, riding a tube is great. It's so nice to be pulled behind the boat and there's tons of fun. But that is not the experience we want day to day inside of our family or week to week. Feeling like we're being dragged behind the boat of life is not a lot of fun at all. And so these weekly resets just gives you a bit more slack in the line where it doesn't feel like you're getting dragged through life. And then you have your family base camps, these quarterly resets. And this is a bit of a different stage. At a deeper level, maybe you're just lacking some spontaneity in your life, or feeling like the space that you wish to have for quality time together is not there quite as much. It feels like maybe you're struggling to make big decisions together, or maybe not even really having enough space to dream unapologetically. If you're in a spot where you're just looking for a bit more zest in your life and looking to re-spark that excitement, I would really encourage you to start with your family base camp. Like I said earlier, it's not about doing all of these things at once. Just pick one as a way to go and get started. A question that you might want to ask yourself is, what is the one part of my family operating system, if I was to focus on next, would make everything else easier for my family? After listening to today's episode, it's my hope that you are dead clear on the upgrade that your family operating system needs next. And what I'd love you to do as we wrap up here is take two really quick actions. First, I'd love to see you in the comments below share what is a ritual that has worked really well for your family in the past that's kept you together. And what is the right thing that you're going to be focused on next? It's not only going to help you land with some certainty on where your focus is going forward, but it's also going to help inspire lots of other families watching this around what the right next thing might be for them. And then secondly, please don't miss out on the opportunity just to open up your calendar after this and to schedule some time to go and do this. If it's the daily check-in, put a little reminder and a prompt in your calendar that's recurring every morning or every night just to say check in, right? Cues are so helpful to prompt us and to remind us of the things that we want to go and do, especially daily check-ins. Or if it's the weekly reset, carve out 30 or 60 minutes this weekend to sit down with your partner to plan the week ahead. Or if you're going to be focused on your family base camp, flip through the calendar and find, hey, when can we find a day to insulate ourselves from distraction so we can start to strategically talk about the next leg in our journey together. Without space, it's so difficult to go and follow through in the things that we've committed to. So don't miss that opportunity. If you'd like some help implementing this, one of the things I'm just going to share in the show notes, if you will, or the description wherever you're watching this, is just a short link to be able to download a simple PDF that I have that summarizes the choreography that we use for each of these three components. A really simple guide that's going to help you take what you just heard and starts to implement it inside of your family. And I encourage you, use that as a starting line and really make this your own. But just remember, there's no such thing as a perfect family operating system, only a better one. Better always beats best. The system that you've had in the past is not going to be perfect forever. You always have an opportunity to upgrade it. What's most important as a chief family officer is that you are regularly taking out the time to evaluate your family system and to start to identify, well, what do we need now? By continuing to ask yourself what you need now, you're going to put yourself in a position where your family operating system continues to evolve to support the emerging needs of those that you love.